Okay, we're back. We're going to try this again because the feed is acting crazy, the fungus is acting crazy, the enemy is getting mad, and we're going to get to this lesson on tonight. So, we're talking about the book of Ruth. We're talking about tonight. This is our women's transform sisterhood Bible study. In this series that we've been doing this month, we were talking about women that God can use. Last week we talked about Hagar and the justice, and we're receiving justice when it's unjust. This tonight we're going to be talking on Ruth, and we're going to get as much as we can through before the feed and everything starts acting crazy. As I begin to say, and hope you guys come back on, hope you guys can hear me, throw them thumbs up, share, let me know. The story of Ruth is a familiar story. We hear it and we talk about it a lot. We always talk about it in the reference of Boaz and Ruth, but I want to talk a little bit about Ruth, who Ruth was, in the journey that she had to take and the choices that she had to make. And many of us can relate to that because sometimes you're in a situation where you have to make some drastic choices, some life and death choices. And it is very important. And in this story, Ruth had to make some choices. And a lot of times those life and death choices are very hard. And you really got to pray about it. You begin to ask God because the choices that you make may change your life. But the key thing is to be obedient to what God is telling you to do when you make that choice, and step out on faith and trust God in the making of the choice, that God will lead you and that you've made a right decision. And in the story of Ruth, she had to make a choice to either go back to her family or continue on with Naomi on this journey that they were going to, because they were at a point where they had nothing and everything was gone. The men were gone and they really didn't know how to do too much as women. Now, if you do your research, and as I said earlier, Ruth is a princess. Her father is the king of the Moabites, so she's a princess. Ruth had to make a big decision to leave the throne, to leave her covering. Now, she had to make that decision even when she married the son of Naomi family, her religion, to go and serve a God that she didn't know anything about. Her people served a different God than who Naomi served. So it's very important as we go back and do our study, and I want you to do your study and to look and see and understand that Ruth had to make a big choice. She had to make a choice to leave her throne of being a princess, to follow these people, to follow this man that she was in love with, to follow his family, and to serve the God that they serve, and to give up the God that she served. And a lot of times we don't look at that part of that, because a lot of times many of us have to make those decisions too. Sometimes you're in your walk of life, you have to make a tough decision. Do I leave my family to follow Christ? I've given my life over to Christ. I don't do the same things that I used to do. And everybody's used to seeing me doing the old things. And now I've changed and I have to make that decision. Do I want to hang out at the family reunion late? Because I know after a certain hour, they're going to bring the beer out. They're going to start drinking. They're going to start smoking, getting high. Everything is going to get popping. Do I stay? I go to the family reunion because it's my family. But do I stay after a certain time? Because I don't do those things anymore. And so Ruth had to make that decision. And many of you are in situations where you have to make decisions, as when you come to Christ and you give your life over to God, and you have to make that decision at a point in time. Do I continue to hang out at the club? Do I continue to do these things? I enjoy my friends. I'm going to hang out with them. But you know what, guys? I can't go to the club right now because God is working on me. And that is an area that you have to get delivered from. And so some of you can relate to Ruth in this situation. Ruth had to give up her throne as a princess and give up her people in her religion to follow her husband and his family. So she had a lot of trust, more trust than we realize, in Naomi, to guide her and to walk with her. Hey, Auntie, we're back. We hope this works. So, to trust Naomi to that point that she kind of literally trusts Naomi with her life, because she has left everything, and Ruth had to begin to start over. And this is part of the story we don't get into. We don't look at the life of Ruth. We get into talking about her and Boaz, but we don't get into the point that Ruth had to give up a lot of stuff in order to get where she needed to go. And God blessed her. And many of you have to do the same thing. There's a point in your life where you're going to have to give up some things that in order to walk with Christ. Hi, Lillian. Thank you for joining. To walk with Christ. If you may not want to give up, but if you made that determination, say, you know, I'm going to serve the Lord right now. I can't hang out with you guys. We're still friends, but there's some things I can't do that I used to do because I know those things that I used to do are the things that got me in trouble, and God has forgiven me, and I'm trying to turn a new leaf. And what we do, guys, sometimes we mess up. You know, we give our life to Christ and we cut from people off, period. Well, we don't want to have nothing to do with, and we don't do that. There may be a time in the season where you're going to have to cut some people off because you got to do the things that God needs you to do. And you got to grow a little bit. But God will take you back to those people because you're going to be the one that's going to have to witness to those people. Because, and why? It's because they know you from the past. They know what you used to do. And when they see the new you, and they can tell, because someone has to know a thimble of your story. Somebody has to know a thimble of your business in order to be the one that confirm in the confirmation that, you know what, that's not the same person that used to be. That's not the same person we used to hang out with. That's someone different. So sometimes we have to let people know a little bit of our business because the testimony that God gives us, someone has to confirm and get that confirmation. And it's the witness. It's the witness. Auntie said she gave up everything. I know that's right. Me too, Auntie. You know, you need to have a witness. God is going to always have a witness because someone's going to go back to testify to say, you know what, I remember when she used to do this and that. But look at God. I want to serve the God she's serving because if he can change her or he can change him, I know he can change me. So that is so important to remember. You know, when we give our lives to Christ, you cut off people for a season because God's got to work on you. And you got to do what you need. But God is going to send you back to them folks. And there's some folks we don't want to go back to because there's some folks that said, Lord, I won't have to go back. But then we can't say what we don't want to do because God ends up sending us back. But he's going to send you back stronger. He's going to send you back with the word. He's going to send you back with boldness. Sometimes we go back too early. And when you go back too early, then those people will pull you back to the old way instead of you pulling them to God's side. So we have to be careful. You got to know the time and the season, and God would get you ready to go back. Because when you go back, you're going to be prepared in order to do what God has called you to do. So that is so important. Church, yeah, you do. You have to cut people off in your family. You got to cut people off in your church. You got to cut people off in your work. You know, if they're not going anywhere and they're not going where you're trying to go, we got to learn how to cut some people off because, see, some people can't go where we need to go. God is not going to take everybody. And that's what was happening with Ruth and Naomi. They didn't realize Oprah couldn't go on this journey. It wasn't meant for Oprah to go. You know, she had to go back home. This journey wasn't for her. Could you imagine if she had went with them on the journey? Would the outcome be the same? We don't know. Would there have been a battle for Boaz? We don't know. So the journey was not for Oprah. So she had to make that decision to go back. But the journey was for Ruth and Naomi to go. The journey was basically, we know the story, it was for Ruth. Naomi was there as a teacher and a guide to get her back on track. It was many years in between the death of their husbands in the harvest season. And Naomi knew this was a harvest season and we need food. So we need to go back to my homeland so we can glean and get from the harvest. So I want you to understand and get to understand Ruth left a lot in order to go and follow the God of Naomi, which is our God. And she had to renounce her own religion. She had to renounce. Imagine if Ruth went back to her family after giving up. Do you think they would accept her back in? That's a question to think about. And as you do your study, and I want you to read that story again, but I want you to read it with a different mindset. If Ruth would have went back to her family after the many years that she left and was gone, would they have accepted her back? Would they have killed her? Would they have kicked her out? Because they're looking at her like, wait a minute, you don't serve our God anymore. You serve this other God. So why are you here? You've lost your position. So that's so important to think about. So as they journeyed back to the city and went back to Bethlehem, and they came across the people and they saw what was going on in the field, that's when the directions came for Ruth. Now, Naomi told her where to go. You know, she needs to go out, and they went out. Verse 8 in chapter 2, it says, This said Boaz unto Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Well, as you read the beginning of the chapter 2, it goes into talk about when Ruth was out there gleaning and Boaz came back and he was like, hey man, you know, who's that? Who's that woman over there? Who's that over there gleaning? Because Boaz must have knew everybody that was on his team. So he knew everybody that was out there. But he saw this unfamiliar face. Now to think about Ruth, she stayed in the background. She laid back and picked up what was all being dropped. She didn't go all up front. She didn't be all boastful. She didn't try to show herself. She kind of hid in the background and stayed in the back while God worked on her. And she began to pick up what was being dropped. And that's something we need to, that's so powerful, because sometimes God puts you in a position where you got to be in the back. And you got to be in the behind the scenes, and you're not up front right now. And you gleaning from what's being left off. You listen to your leader, and you learning things from other people, and you're growing in Christ. Because see, a lot of times you don't have to do everything. You got to be in the front line. You got to be in the front line. God used those in the back. And when you're in the back, sometimes you don't want to be back. You're like, why nobody sees me? Well, that's good. Nobody don't need to see you right now, because you're learning. You're picking up. God is teaching you. God is molding you. And that's what he was doing with Ruth. She was out there. She was reaping. She was picking up behind them. She didn't make a sound. She was doing what she wanted to do. That was so important. And when Boaz found that out, you know, that began her favor. She had favor. He found that out. And then when he found out what she had done and the good things that she had done with Naomi, it even pleased him even more, to the point that he told the men to leave something for her. Not just the droppings, but to leave something for her. Think about it. That's amazing how favor works. At first, you're out there picking up the scraps and picking up the pieces that people left behind. You know, you know the position is for you, but you're the one that's got to train the person that's coming to the position. That's okay, because see, God's going to elevate you. Or you're the one that's sitting there you're picking up little bits of this, and you got to do this job, knowing you can do the job better than that person, but you stay there, and you get what you can get, and you glean what you can. You learn what you can. I got to tell you, you learn what you can. You once you get them skills and that knowledge, you're going to eventually, God's going to open the door, because our gifts make room for us where you're going to be able to get elevated. Don't rush into it. Glean. Do like Ruth did. Stay in the background. Get all the training you can. Get all the learning. Yeah, you may have to train that person. That person's getting that position that you've been praying and asking God for. But God says, I got another position for you higher than that position that you were looking for. But I need you to stay humble, and I need you to stay in your place, and I need you to pick up the scraps and the pieces that are being left, because the favor is getting ready to fall upon you. And that's what happened to Ruth. When Boaz found out that she was out there and what she had did for Naomi, and how she had sacrificed to leave her people and leave her position to follow this old lady and to help this old lady, and not to leave her by herself, and not to let her die in her misery because of the death of her husband. And that takes a lot. And Ruth stayed with Naomi, and Ruth went out there, and Ruth went to work for Naomi. She didn't tell Naomi, girl, you better go get your own food. I'm going to get mine. No, Ruth went out there saying, I'm going to get for both of us. I'm going to bring back for both of us. And that brought favor in the eyes of Boaz. Well, Boaz told the men to don't bother her, but leave something for her to pick up. Leave something. So he gave direction. So the first thing was Ruth had to go through a deliverance process. Most of us got to go through a deliverance process. And when you go through your deliverance process, stay in the process. Don't get out. Because that deliverance is that part of it. You got to go through something. You got to release some stuff in order for God to be able to do what he needs to do in your life. Many of us are holding on baggage. We holding on old stuff. Ruth couldn't go out there and glean in that field, but she had a whole lot of bags. She had to loose and let some stuff go. And many of us out there, many of you out there, you're at a point where God is trying to do some deliverance, but you're holding on to a lot of past hurt. You're holding on to a lot of anger. You're holding on to a lot of bitterness. And God is trying to get you to release it in order for you to move on. In order for you to get the favor of him, you got to release some of this old stuff. So Ruth had to leave her old life of being that princess and had to leave all that old stuff back into her old country in order to move on to the new country, into the new place. And God is saying, you're going to have to leave that old hurt and that old pain. Give it over to him. His shoulders are big enough to carry it. You've been carrying it long enough. Give it over to him, the hurt, the pain, the bitterness, the abuse, the anger, the domestic violence. Give it over. That's part of the deliverance process. Yes, ma'am. That's the deliverance process. And don't get out. Many of us get out of the process. Deliverance is not easy. Deliverance is not fun, but it's something that you got to go through. And don't get out of the process. Yes, it's going to look rough. You're going to go in it thinking it's okay. And you're going to get in the middle of the hallway of that process of deliverance. And there is no windows. And you just got to, that's right. You got to let it go. You got to let it go. Give it to God. You're going to think you can climb out the window. You're going to turn back and be like, I'm going back to the back. And that back door shuts because God said, you already been back there. I'm trying to get you to go forward. But you got to go through the deliverance process. Ruth had to go through that process. She had to leave the old and follow someone to take her to a new. And so the next thing was direction. Once she got the direction for Boaz and once she got the direction from God, favor began to fall because she followed the directions. A lot of times God gives us the directions, but we don't like the directions he gives us. We like, really, Lord, do I really have to do that? And God says, yes. God is a precise when he gives directions. Think about the story of Noah. He gave Noah precise directions of how to build the ark, all the way down to what type of wood, all the way down to the type of animals to put in there. God will give you directions. He's not lack. He's going to give you precise directions of what to do and how to do it. It's us that we don't want to listen. We don't listen. He gives us, we don't like the directions because we want to do it our way. And that's why we're still in the deliverance process. Because God has given you directions to get out of the deliverance process. He's giving you directions of things that you need to do to get out of your deliverance and get free and let it go. But we don't want to hear the direction. So I want you to begin to listen for God's directions. He's giving you precisely what you've been asking for. Directions may not be easy. He may send you down a road. You may be going down a road and he done threw up a detour sign and you like, Lord, I'm used to this road. This is a familiar road. I don't want to go no other way. I'm comfortable going down this road. And God is saying, I'm going to put you on a detour because that road that you're going on is leading to destruction. So I need to detour you onto a different road so that you can become and get favor like Ruth, where you can begin to glean. And I'm telling people to leave blessings for you that you really don't even know where they're coming from. That's right. God begin to order our steps. And we got to begin to pray, God, order my steps. I want to go down the familiar. But you know what? I need to go down the unfamiliar. Because on the unfamiliar road, that is your blessing. If Ruth would have went back to the familiar of her family, she wouldn't have got what she got at the end of the story. But Ruth took the road of the unfamiliar. She didn't know what was in store for them when they got to Bethlehem. She didn't know what was going to be there. She never had to deal with that. She didn't know, but she stepped out on faith and she trusted God enough to say, I'm going to follow someone that's going to take me to a better place. And I believe it wasn't just following Naomi. It was just her love and trust for God, that she trusts and followed God's direction to tell her to follow Naomi and to get where she needs to be. The third thing is the destination. As we know at the end of the story, because she was obedient, she went through her process of deliverance, she followed her direction, her destination. In chapter 4, let me see if I can read it for you real quick. Chapter 4, verse 13, it says, so Boaz took Ruth and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception and she bare a son. The most powerful thing of that story, of the story about Ruth, that's right, trust God. Trust God is so important. Is that because she trusts God, because she listened to God, the very field that Ruth was gleaning in at the end of the story was the very field that Ruth had owned. Once she married Boaz, that land was just as much as hers as his because she became his wife. And because of her obedience and not being loud and voiceful, not going out saying, I am this, I am that, but humbling herself enough. Think about it, man. It's powerful. Think about it. To humble herself enough to get on the ground, to pick up leftovers, when she could have went back to a palace and got fed portions and portions of food because of who she was. She sacrificed that and went and trusted God and went to a field, humbled herself, and picked up scraps, but obeyed the woman of God that God put on her path and followed the directions that she gave, which gave her favor with the man that she didn't even know. Look how God works when we obey. Look what God does when we humble ourselves. He'll begin to bring the overflow. He'll begin to bring a blessing. And that's what happened in the story of Ruth. It's not just about the love story of Boaz and Ruth. It's about the sacrifice that Ruth made. It's about her humbling herself in the favor that God put on her life. She had favor with God, that she married the man, and now the very field that she gleaned in was the very field that she owned. He puts us in the same situation. The very thing that you were struggling with or crying, and the person that you had to train in that position is that next position is the very same position that God is going to bless you with. And it may not be at that workplace. It could be at another workplace. He could move and elevate you somewhere else, where that you go somewhere else and you do much more than you were at your place. But it's about humbling ourselves, trusting God, believing God, and letting God deliver us, give us directions so we can get to the destination that he has for us. We're holding up our own destiny. We're holding up our own destination because we don't want to be humble. We don't want to listen to God. We want everything our way. We get mad because it doesn't go our way. This is not Burger King. The process is hard. I'm not here to tell you it's easy. The process gets hard. But if you trust God and give God your hands and let God walk you through the process, you will become out of the end, and you will begin to get that same favor that Ruth got. As you read the story, like I said, we know the story. And hey, TJ, the story is powerful. And I didn't want to get into just the relationship of her Boaz, because we always talk about the relationship of Ruth and Boaz, but I wanted to get into Ruth's head, and I wanted to get into Ruth's life and who Ruth really was and the sacrifice she had to make, because she made some sacrifices. Okay, the Bible, it skips a lot, but can you imagine the many years and the sacrifice that she had to give up? The throne that she had to leave because following another God, following this woman that she trusts, following the God and trusting God enough that he sustained them. He provided them with food. He provided her with a job. They provided her with a home. I mean, come on now. They went back and they got food. Then she had a job gleaning, and then she had a home. He gave her a home, a place to stay. Come on, that was favor. Just because he heard that she was a blessing to this woman in the favor of God. And then he gets to marry. She married him. And then she became the very owner of the land that she was gleaning. So I want you to really get back into that. I want you to read that story again. I want you to read it again with a different mindset. Don't read it just as this love story between Ruth and Boaz, but I want you to read it and get into the heart and the mind of Ruth and the sacrifice, because Ruth, in our series that we're doing, Women That God Can Use, Ruth is our woman of favor. Last week we did Hagar, a woman of justice. So this week was in our series is Ruth, the woman of favor, because God gave her favor. Not that she married Boaz, but the fact of when we sacrifice and we give things up as we take this walk with God, God sees your sacrifice. He sees your tears. He sees what you've gone through. He's seen your struggles. He knows what you've been dealing with. Hey, Kira, he sees it all. He sees it all. But when you begin to trust him and give him your hand and trust him with your heart, and that's one of the biggest problems we have. It's very hard for us to trust God. But when you trust him, totally trust him, he's going to bring you out no matter what. But you got to go through your process. You got to go through your deliverance. The deliverance process is not easy, as we said it earlier. It's hard, but stick in the fight, because on the other end of that process, on the other end of that hallway, there's a door that God is opening up. Hey, Kira. And when he opens that door up, he's letting you walk through it. Just like Ruth walked through the door and got married and inherited all that Boaz had because she was his wife. So she got back. Come on now. She got back just as much as she left. She got back again. She left all that she left in Moab. She left her throne as being a princess. She left her family. She gave up the God that she served there. But at the end, Ruth came out on top anyway. She got everything that her husband had when she married Boaz. Everything. So it's the story. And children. And children. She got kids. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story. You can catch it on replay. Put your replay down there and everything. But we're gonna try to get on as much as we can on Tuesday. I pushed 9 o'clock. I kind of got behind. We have some technical difficulties and everything, but that's okay. But I thank everybody that joined in. You can catch it on replay. Just if you want to leave some comments, you can email me at transformation18.com. As I always say, put your comments down there, put your likes, put the thumbs up. Sharing is caring. Let everybody know we're on. I'm trying to get on every Tuesday, you guys, if possible, at 9 o'clock. If I can't make it, we'll do it on Wednesday. But we're doing the series on women that God can use. And we're not talking about the same ordinary women we talk about all the time. We're going to be talking about there's some different women in the Bible that God used mightily. And we're going to be opening them up, and we're going to talk about them and get in their head and come from the heart of these women, because many of us are like some of these women that are in the Bible. And we're going to look how God used them, no matter their hardships, no matter what they came through, no matter what they did. God uses you. The worst, he uses the prostitute, he uses the drug dealer, he uses whom he ever wants to use. You may not have been the best person, but he will use you if you give yourself over to him. He will use you so mightily, because each and every one of you have a story to share. Each and every one of you have a testimony to share, and that is what our platform here is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this study on the book of Ruth. And as I said, I want you to go back in there, get in Ruth's head, dig a little deeper in the story. Don't just look at it as a love story between her and Boaz, but look at Ruth, all the stuff that she sacrificed, and put yourself in her shoes. Would you have done that? Would you have left your throne to follow a God that you was not too familiar of, but you follow him anyway? So just ask yourself the question. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Auntie, Kira, TJ, Lydian. Thank you guys all for joining in. I hope you guys see you again. And God bless you all. Love you. Good night. Bye-bye.